From Times Square in New York, sitting in for Barbara Walters, Connie Chung.
Good evening and welcome to 2020. Barbara has the night off. Tonight, when you first heard that Jesse Jackson admitted he fathered an out-of-wedlock child, what did you think? Jackson, the charismatic national symbol of human rights, the married father of 5 grown children. Who was that so-called other woman? What were your preconceptions about her? Tonight, we bring you an exclusive interview with Karen Stanford, the mother of Jesse Jackson's baby. A private affair goes public.
When people call me a mistress, I'm pretty offended by that because I don't see myself as a mistress or a kept woman, which I think the term mistress implies. I'm a career-oriented woman and I work very hard.
39-year-old Karen Stanford is still coming to grips with her 4.5-year affair with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Was she a cunning vixen who trapped the Reverend? Was Jackson a philanderer who set his sights on Stanford? Or was this an office romance that went too far? To understand Karen Stanford's point of view, you have to go back almost 30 years. Jesse Jackson, who had been one of Martin Luther King's lieutenants, was now becoming an established leader of the African-American community.
I am somebody.
He inspired students touring schools across the country. Karen Stanford was one of those kids who watched the charismatic leader speak at her elementary school.
I was a kid that tended to look at the cracks of the sidewalk when I walked down the street. I remember counting the sidewalks and skipping to school. But after listening to Reverend Jesse Jackson say to us as kids,
I may be poor.
You know, you may be poor, you may not be rich, you may come from the ghettos, but you are somebody. And don't ever walk with your head down. Raise your head up high. I remember that. This is high school graduation.
Growing up, Karen Stanford was politically active. In high school, sophomore class president, political science major and cheerleader in college, a master's degree in public administration, and a PhD dissertation on Jesse Jackson's foreign policy record. That opened the door to their first one-on-one meeting.
I was very impressed. I was very inspired. And I walked away from that meeting believing that this guy is a true believer. I was won over.
4 years later, Karen Stanford would come face-to-face with Jackson again, this time as a University of Georgia professor, turning her dissertation into a book.
After that meeting, which lasted all day, he called me up about a week later and said, hey, I want you to come work for me.
And what did you think of that?
Well, I was floored. I didn't expect that.
For Stanford, it was a dream job, but it didn't take long before her relationship with the man 20 years her senior, married with 5 children, began to take a personal turn.
I guess we just developed a close working relationship, and I think it just became something deeper.
Why would you have a relationship with a man who was married, you were single, and a man who is so obviously involved in a public life?
From what I understood about Reverend Jackson's marriage, was that it was basically a political marriage, a marriage of convenience at that point.
Did Jesse Jackson explain to you that he had no relationship with his wife?
In so many words. He said to me that our relationship would not interfere with any other relationship that he had.
But you know what? That sounds like a married man. Sounds like a married man who wants to fool around.
That wasn't the case at all.
But a married man who is in public life.
I think I followed his lead. If he was okay with whatever impact it would have on his public life, then I was okay with it too.
They would both attend the Democratic National Convention in August of 1996. He as a speaker,
For the living wage for every man.
she as a delegate. Stanford would then move to Washington for a congressional job and to work for Jackson, who also had a home there. How would you describe your relationship with Jesse Jackson?
We did what other couples do. We went to the park. We went to the movies.
You didn't hide? You didn't sneak around?
No. No.
If you weren't sneaking around, did you feel comfortable with holding hands or going arm in arm?
No.
I mean, were you essentially living together?
I wouldn't say we were living together, but we spent a lot of time together.
She found herself on the road with Jackson, traveling all over the world, meeting celebrities such as Quincy Jones and Charles Barkley. I'm getting the impression that you were not in any way ashamed of the relationship.
No. And he wasn't either.
Did he make any promises to you?
No, I think we both knew our relationship had limitations.
What kind of future did you believe you would have together?
I didn't think we'd have a future together. I just thought it was something we were doing for the moment. But we both knew it would end. We just didn't know when.
Did you love him? Did he love you?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Did you in any way want to marry him?
If things had been different, probably so. It was such a comfortable relationship.
It was less than a year into their relationship, however, when Karen Stanford was diagnosed with breast cancer. She says she and Jesse Jackson resolved to fight it together. For Stanford, the cancer not only threatened her life, but the treatment would have a profound effect as well.
I went straight into menopause after chemotherapy, and my doctors felt that it was highly likely I'd never conceive.
But just a year after chemotherapy, Stanford discovered she was pregnant. Did you think, when you found out you were pregnant, that it was Jesse Jackson's baby?
Oh, I knew it was his child. Oh, absolutely. We took all the precautions that one would take when they're trying not to have a child, and it happened anyway.
Although Stanford's doctors told her that a pregnancy could cause a life-threatening cancer relapse, she decided alone to go forward with the pregnancy.
I knew that it was probably going to be my only opportunity to have a child. I also remember praying over and over again, asking God to give me that one chance in life to have a baby. And so I couldn't just say, well, God, it's not the right time. I couldn't do it. I didn't feel like I had a choice in the matter. I had to have the baby.
Meanwhile, Stanford says she thought Jesse Jackson was considering a run for president in the year 2000, while she was deciding whether to tell him that she was pregnant.
I did not want my pregnancy to interfere. And so I told him that I had been dating someone else and that I was going to get engaged, get married, and leave town.
But did you think about the consequences that this would be Jesse Jackson's baby? And if anybody found out, it would be in the headlines.
I thought about it all the time, and that's why I asked a friend of mine to play fiancé.
Did you think you could perpetuate that fabrication?
Yeah, I did. I thought I could just leave Washington, D.C. and move back to California and that it would be over.
When we come back, Jesse Jackson finds out he's the father of Karen's child.
Do you think he would have wanted you to handle it differently?
To terminate the pregnancy?
Possibly.
There's a place where
Karen Stanford had grown up admiring Jesse Jackson. Now she found herself pregnant with his child. But how long could she keep it from him? And what would happen when he found out?
When I talked with the president and Mrs. Clinton and Hillary.
In January of 1998, while Jesse Jackson was having an extramarital affair with Karen Stanford, ironically, he also began advising President Clinton about his affair with Monica Lewinsky.
The president sustained by his faith.
Some people would think it was disingenuous, it was hypocritical for him to be advising President Clinton during the Lewinsky affair and at the same time having an affair himself.
I don't think it was hypocritical at all. Not at all, nor disingenuous. I think that he could empathize with President Clinton because he was in a similar situation. And who better to give you advice than someone who's walked in your shoes?
Jackson was even so bold as to bring Stanford to the White House during their affair, although he didn't know at the time she was pregnant with his child. You're pregnant with Jesse Jackson's baby, and you go see President Clinton, who's in the thick of the Lewinsky affair, and you don't think that's strange?
Maybe it was strange, but I couldn't focus on the president and Monica Lewinsky. I was too busy trying to save my life, trying to make life and death decisions about cancer and pregnancy, and I was trying to find ways to keep the pregnancy hidden because I knew that, you know, it would become a media circus.
And while Jackson was helping the president put his political life back together, Jackson's personal life began to unravel. While Stanford had told Jackson the father of her child was another man, Jackson eventually realized the baby was his. Ultimately, Jackson withdrew his name as a potential presidential candidate.
Jesse Jackson announced he will not make a third run for the presidency.
Although Jackson vehemently denies it, Stanford claims the impending birth of her baby played a part in his decision.
I think he was concerned that because reporters were calling and asking about who the father of my baby was, his concern was that they would focus more on his personal life rather than his campaign platform.
Do you think he would have wanted you to handle it differently?
To terminate the pregnancy?
Possibly.
I don't think so. Although he is pro-choice publicly, and he truly believes that, he has a difficult time with abortion. I mean, his mother, I think she was about 15 or 16 when she got pregnant with him, and he always said to me, if my mother had abortion as an option, could you imagine? I wouldn't be here.
In early May 1999, Jackson made headlines around the world when he went to Serbia and won the release of 3 captured U.S. soldiers.
Welcome back.
Just 2 weeks later, on May 18th, Karen Stanford quietly gave birth to his baby girl, Ashley. Were you upset that the father of your baby wasn't there?
No, I just did what I had to do. And we were in a very unconventional, untraditional situation.
Whom do you think she looks like?
She looks like her father, absolutely. She looks very similar to her siblings. Not me nor my siblings, but Jackson's children.
What kind of relationship did Jesse Jackson have with you and Ashley after she was born?
He was her father. He was concerned about her just like any father would be. He checked on her, he came to visit her, he played with her. She knew him as daddy.
For the next year and a half, Jackson publicly participated in high-profile events, traveling to Mississippi to investigate the hanging death of a young black man.
It's more and go.
Speaking at the Democratic National Convention in Los Angeles.
Keep hope alive.
And leading protests in Florida over voting irregularities in the presidential election.
We love Jackson.
Privately, Stanford says Jackson continued to see her, stopping in Los Angeles to visit their out-of-wedlock baby, keeping her existence under wraps. That is, until a tabloid reporter called. The explosive story was going to hit the newsstand soon.
I was mortified. We just weren't ready for it. I wasn't ready for that.
Although Stanford had kept her family in the dark about the baby's true father, Stanford says Jackson had already told his family.
His family already knew.
They did?
Oh, yes. He had told his family about the baby probably a year and a half before the story became public.
Knowing the world would soon hear about his affair and Ashley from a tabloid, Jackson decided to go public first. In a statement, he said, "I fully accept responsibility, and I am truly sorry for my actions." With that, Jackson said he was going to take time off from public life to reconcile with his family. But his admission hardly put the story to rest. A media circus did ensue. Rumors spread that Stanford had been paid large sums of money to keep quiet. Did you ever use your situation to try and get Jesse Jackson to pay you any amount of money?
Absolutely not. It never came up. We didn't have conversations about money and coercion and blackmail and I need things and you better give them to me. It just wasn't that kind of relationship.
Yet when Miss Stanford left, she received $35,000.
Both Jackson and Stanford said she did receive 2 payments, $15,000 for moving expenses and another $20,000 for a research study, all of which Jackson defended as legitimate business expenses.
There is no evidence that there's any inconsistency or impropriety in the way that...
But now their relationship has become strained. Jackson asked Stanford to sign a confidentiality agreement.
First of all, I was shocked. I hadn't expected it. I had basically kept the details of our relationship confidential since I began seeing Reverend Jackson. And so then to be hit with a confidentiality agreement was highly insulting to me.
She never signed. Infuriated, Stanford took Jackson to court to formalize the $4,000 a month he had been paying in child support. She also wants a written agreement for what she says he had already privately promised, to make sure Ashley's future is secure.
Strawberries. From my experience with breast cancer, we don't know what the future holds, and Ashley should be taken care of financially.
The story becoming public and the court battle that followed apparently caused Jackson to curtail his visits to his daughter. But just last month, he resumed. What do you want from Jesse Jackson in this settlement?
I want Jesse Jackson to be a father to Ashley.
What are these?
What are they? I want us to have very clear visitation guidelines.
Well, tell me what color. Look at the color.
Because he grew up in a similar situation. He was born out of wedlock by, you know, a teenage mother and a father who wasn't really a father to him. And so he understands the hurt and the pain it causes.
Karen Stanford is now living in Los Angeles and working as a consultant for a billionaire friend of Jackson's and raising her daughter. If you had it to do over, would you not have had a relationship with Jesse Jackson?
I can't say that because without Reverend Jackson, I wouldn't have Ashley. And I don't regret her for 1 second. I call her my miracle baby. I'm convinced she was supposed to be here and I was supposed to be her mom. And I'm very proud of that.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm very proud of my decision not to terminate her. And I know it's caused a lot of pain. I know it's caused a lot of problems for people, but she's here. And she's happy and she's healthy. That's what we do together. I think it was a good decision.
Reverend Jesse Jackson declined to do an on-camera interview, but I talked with him on the telephone yesterday. He said, and I quote, "I offer no response because any further response exposes the child in ways that I feel to be harmful. She deserves support, a guaranteed college education, dignity, and privacy." In addition, he said he and his wife are offering a life insurance policy on his life with Ashley as the beneficiary. He said he believes he and Karen Stanford are nearing a resolution on a settlement.